This episode,
Fab Facts at PWOR.
the Podsterons give us the chills.
We head to a thatched cottage in the Randomiser.
And there's more 1999 with Samira Ahmed and Kevin Fong
That's all coming up in Pod 67.
of the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Well, this is slightly unnerving, isn't it?
It always is when we have to look at each other. This is the Gerry Anderson podcast. I'm Jamie Anderson.
And I'm Richard James, and we're here for the next hour and a half or so, hour and 20 minutes, talking all things Gerry Anderson. But it's slightly strange this week because we're doing it face-to-face, aren't we, Jamie? And also, we might have added dog at some point.
Possibly added dog because we're recording it from my home office in the Welsh countryside.
Yes.
And yes, the big dog keeps coming to say hello. Anyway, they don't want to know about the dog.
No.
They want to know about all things Gerry Anderson.
Yes.
Thunderbird, Space 1999, Captain Scarlet,
Yes.
Stingray, Joe 90, I
That
suppose.
kind of thing,
bit
yeah.
of UFO, anything and everything. We might even mention Space Precinct, Richard.
Might do. Can't think why, but we might.
Well, listeners, you may not know this, but Richard was actually in Space Precinct.
Yes, I was a long time ago, Jamie.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think I was that old, would you?
You wouldn't know it to look at him, but he was. Anyway, look, we're going to be talking about all that sort of stuff, Richard. What's the best way that people can make sure they keep in touch and, you know, listen to all our podcasts and
Yes,
stuff?
well, all sorts of things they can do. Of course, they can always get in touch with us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and we'll be reading out a few listeners' emails a little later on. You can hashtag us on Twitter if you're on Twitter. If you like a bit of tweetage, hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast. And you can also tag him, I'm Jamie Anderson, and me, Richard N. James, to make doubly sure that we see your tweets. We might even respond, we might even read them out in a future podcast. You can also join our Facebook group just by going to facebook.com/groups/podsterons. And finally, don't forget, if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any single podcast, just subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on. That makes sure that you hear every single podcast as it's released. And while you're there, you can also leave us a nice review. And you can rate us, and you can share us with your friends so they can hear us too.
You've really
I've nailed it now.
stuck to that poem now every week.
Well, it seems to trip off the tongue, doesn't it?
No, it's a real beauty.
Yes.
And now, if you're new to us, you may not know why you should subscribe. I'm not really sure either, but if you do, you'll get a weekly dose of things like Fab Facts and Gerry Anderson news
Yeah.
and listener emails, also known as Voice of the Podsterons,
Yes.
and a Randomiser from Chris Dale,
Yes.
which is very popular, which takes you on an episode-by-episode journey through 6 decades of Gerry Anderson goodness.
Love it.
And there's also always a weekly feature, and this week is part 2 of an interview I did. Interview is probably not actually the right term because
Yeah.
I just sat there while our 2 interviewees chatted, but it's with Samira Ahmed and Kevin Fong, who are both broadcasters who love Space 1999.
Boy, weren't they enthusiastic.
Yeah, and they get even more enthusiastic this week.
Great.
So you can look forward to that later in the podcast.
Excellent. Yeah, we have had lots of interviewees over the past 66 pods. So if you want to go back and listen to any of them, they're all still up on YouTube and iTunes and so on. So you can dip in at your heart's content and listen to the likes of John Coleshaw and Sophie Aldred and Phil Plate and
David Quantick.
and Wayne Forrester.
Nick Briggs.
Yes, David Graham.
McKinnon Saunders.
Oh, right. I'm going to stop now because I can't remember them all, as you know.
Sophia Miles,
Yes.
Lisa Mazumba,
Yes.
and many others.
Lee Sullivan. Terry Adlam.
Yeah, Lee Sullivan's a very popular one, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
there's lots to listen to.
Yeah.
Pop back and have a listen, or not. It's up
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
But we should do some Gerry Anderson stuff.
Oh, well, that's what people are here for.
And one of the reasons people come is for Fab Facts.
Is it, though?
Yes. In fact,
Okay.
Eric the dog has just arrived
Just in time.
to listen to this week's Fab Facts. So here we go.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Fab Facts is, as most of you will know, some of you may not, a segment of the show where I take a book called Fab Facts.
Yes.
It's Gerry Anderson's Fab Facts, the first universe edition.
Right.
A behind-the-scenes look at TV's most famous adventures in the 21st century by Simon Archer, the dear late Simon Archer.
Great.
I flip through the book, Richard shouts Fab at a random point.
Yep.
I stop on the page where we arrive and pick a random fact which we discuss.
Yes.
Or just read out.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, and then move on.
And move on very quickly. So, Richard, are you ready for your calling of Fab?
I think I'm ready.
Then here we go with the flicking.
Fab!
Page 44 and 45 is where we've stopped.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go for page 44, where there's a nice stingray fact.
Oh, love a bit of stingray.
Now, I'm going to give metric and imperial here.
Right.
To be complete.
Okay.
And the fact
To
is
be a
this.
complete what? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Richard. The underwater shots in Stingray were recorded using an aquarium measuring 2.44 metres by 1.22 metres. That's 8 feet by 4 feet.
I see.
And made of 1.3 centimetre, that's half inch, thick plate glass.
Right.
The model craft never entered the water, but was flown on wires behind the 9,000 litre tank.
Ah.
That's 2,000 gallons.
Yeah, I see. So they didn't actually ever get wet.
No, exactly. So I think a lot of people are probably aware of how it's done, but some maybe you've never even considered it or weren't sure.
Yeah.
So yes, the Stingray model, when it was underwater,
Yeah.
Never
Wasn't
got wet.
underwater at all.
they had some fishes in the tank in the foreground, bubbled up some water. Sometimes they used Alka-Seltzer tablets, but most of the time they just had the bubble generating, oxygenating pump or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then, they'd fly it behind, shine some lights through so that you get the kind of rippling water effect on the craft itself. I think it was a really effective trick.
Would it not have been more effective just to put some sort of filter on the lens and shoot it that way?
You can get the fish, and you can get the depth and the distortion of the water.
No, that's true.
No, it was a really, really nice trick. Now, there is a famous-ish story of... In fact, there's two interesting stories related to this.
I hope so.
One is how they worked out how to do it in the first place, because it was a new trick at the time. And from memory, and I'm pretty sure that Des Saunders told this story, Reg Hill and the rest of them were sat in an office meeting, a production meeting, probably in pre-production on Stingray, possibly towards the end of FAB Facts L5, and on the wall was a calendar, and the picture on that month was some tropical fish in a fish tank. And Reg Hill was staring at it and said, "I've got it. We shoot through a fish tank."
Eureka.
And that was the eureka moment.
I see.
Because it was early days, again, I think this story comes from David Elliott, again from memory. When they first put the fish tank together, they didn't really consider the colossal pressure involved, and they didn't explain to whoever it was that made the tank what it was going to be used for or why, etc. So they filled it with water. The weight of the water was so great that when they popped out for lunch, the glass buckled, smashed, and thousands of litres of water were emptied across the studio floor when they came back. So they had to get much thicker glass for future tanks. And we're well aware of leaking tanks because when we went to Andacon in 2014, we borrowed a tank which unfortunately had a major leak. And we were trying to recreate that Stingray shot and were unable to.
And actually what you did recreate was the breaking of the tank when they went out for lunch during the filming of Stingray.
Pretty much,
That's right. Well, there you go.
Yes, many people were there trying to, plug the leak and stop the water drip, but it was a bit of a disaster. There you go. But, one of many amazing ways in which they developed new special effects techniques through the Supermarination era and beyond.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it? I mean, on a slightly related thing, I was watching some YouTube documentaries about the Bond movies the other day. I think following on from the John Glenn interview that you did a couple of weeks ago, because he's obviously featured in many of them. But they had one particular actress, I can't remember her name, or which film indeed, who couldn't swim. And they had an underwater sequence, of course, typically. So to get around that little problem, they just shot it all on a sound stage, slow-mo, with a wind machine blowing her hair. And they sort of blew some bubbles into shot and so on, and had various fronds waving about. Fooled everyone. Clever, isn't it? Because your eye sort of sees what your brain expects to see.
Yes.
So Stingray behind the tank, your brain expects to see Stingray in the water, so that's what it sees.
Exactly.
Yeah, clever.
Yeah. There you go. Amazingly clever stuff from amazingly clever people.
Yes.
And I guess that sort of brings us to the end of this week's
Tank Facts!
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, and that required no preparation at all. We just did that on the fly.
Had to be.
Tank Facts.
Had to be, didn't it?
There we go.
Great.
So I hope you enjoyed that Fab Fact. Again, we're running a little bit dry, ironically.
Yes.
When it comes to Fab Facts.
Yes.
So,
I mean, we're talking, aren't we, Jamie, about shaking up the format a little bit, aren't we, going forward? Just because, we like to do that, don't we? Because, as I said to you before we recorded this, of course, there was a time before Fab Facts and there was a time before Quickfire 5.
Seems unbelievable now, but you're right.
Yes, so we're just putting our heads together and see how we can just shake things up a little bit for your dear listeners' enjoyment and amusement.
I'm sure they'll be thrilled.
You're listening, of course, to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Do get in touch with us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk because we do love to receive your emails. Even though we don't read every single one out, we do read them and respond if ever we can. And, of course, you can hashtag us on Twitter, hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, and I'll be reading out some tweets a little later on. In fact, I'll give you one now. For example, Cinemarionette got in touch on Twitter to say he celebrated Breakaway Day 2019, of course, as many of you did out there, and he said, I'm going to introduce the Mrs. to Space 1999 for the very first time. She isn't familiar with the concept. She isn't allowed to Google the significance of September 13th, 1999. She only knows that it was an international disaster. A co-worker Googled it, but fortunately, he didn't spoil anything. So that led me to think, is anyone out there, or their partners or wives or husbands or spouses, are they Gerry Anderson widows? In other words, is it just you in the house that loves Gerry Anderson? Do you have to lock yourself away with your headphones or your laptop or your DVD collection? Is it just for you, or are you able to share it with the family? What does everyone else think? Let us know. Just drop us a line, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and we'll read them out next time.
Yeah. We see certainly quite a few long-suffering partners.
Yes.
But we also see people that enjoy it as a couple.
Yeah.
So
actually, it works both ways, doesn't it? Because sometimes it's nice just to have something that's just yours, just for yourself.
Absolutely, Richard.
And that's cool as well.
It's like last night when we sat down and watched
The Three Doctors.
together, because no other bugger wants to watch it with us.
Exactly. That's right, yeah, that was great. Yes, do let us know also if you were with us for Fab Live. We're recording this at Jamie's house the day after, so it's a slightly earlier recording this week of the podcast. So let us know if you watched us on Fab Live last night, and if you didn't, well, where were you? Join us next time, October the 7th, 7 o'clock, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope.
Yes, all those places.
Yeah.
And apologies if you did watch for the technical difficulties. We can highly recommend that you pop along to the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel, where the missing,
Yes.
broken Big Rat Bites from Chris Dale with the Space Precinct theme will be in full, uninterrupted, without any glitches.
Right, Jamie, now, you know what that means.
Yes, it does. Yes, that means I have to make some quick decisions, right?
Absolutely. It's time for your quick fire 5. Are you ready for these?
Yes, Richard, I'm ready.
Right. Anderson Hounds. Four Feather Falls' Dusty the Dog, or Jamie Anderson's Eric?
Oh, poor Eric. Of course it's Eric, even though he can't talk, it's Eric.
Super Marination Uniforms. Captain Scarlet's Zip and Go, or Thunderbird's Got a Dash Sash?
There aren't enough sashes in the world. Sash it is.
Right. Funky Themes. Captain Scarlet's Boom 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 Boom, or UFO's Bumpty 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 Bump Bum.
Ooh. I think that iconic drum beat from Barry Gray for Scarlet is the winner.
Okay. Alien Foods. Space Precinct Simpter Squab, or Terrorhawk's Granite Crunches.
Oh, Granite Crunchies, please, Mother.
And finally, Fab Live. Your place or mine? Okay.
I like getting out of the house once in a while, so I'm going to say your place. Richard.
Okay, fair
What would
enough.
you say?
Well, I would say your place for the very same reason.
I'll be nice to each
Yeah,
other.
there you go.
There we go. Thanks for that.
Well done. There's your quick fire 5.
They weren't too bad, actually.
No, made you think a bit, didn't they?
I can see you went to some effort
I really did.
on yours.
Well, likewise, I'm sure that's reciprocated a little later. When
Some effort has been made.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Not
Because
by
we
me.
only had sort of 3 last
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
but you hadn't really sort of given it much thought at all. had you?
Anyway, Richard, I think it's probably now time we moved on to something everyone's been waiting for, which is the Gerry Anderson news, don't you?
All right then, as it's you.
It's
Newsy news.
Nicely done. We can't do that when you're doing it over FaceTime,
No.
because we're out of sync.
Yes, that's right.
But, how lovely to do it in the flesh, Richard. Anyway, it's Gerry Anderson news time. Obviously, we've done a lot of Space 1999 stuff over the last couple of weeks. But just leading neatly on from that, I want to tell you about something that's not happening for a couple of years, but is Space 1999 related.
Right.
From the 9th to the 13th of September, 2021.
Okay.
It's Destination Moonbase Alpha in
yeah.
London.
Right.
That new convention was announced at the Breakaway Convention in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, last week or the week before. I can't work out where we are in time and space. And it's going to be in the UK. Mostly Space 1999, but not exclusively.
Right.
And plenty of time to prepare for that, save up for the trip or whatever. More details soon, and we'll put a link on the Gerry Anderson website.
Cool.
With a link to that convention website.
Great.
So that'll be exciting.
Yes.
And on a sort of related note to Space 1999, although not quite, I say the day after tomorrow, Richard.
Oh, yeah.
You'll say to me, well, I thought you were going to say Tuesday, because that would be the day after release, or Wednesday, whatever. But no, it's not that. Into Infinity?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it was the Gerry Anderson educational pilot thing, the NBC special treat, whatever it was, with Brian Blessed and Nick Tate and Joanna Dunham.
Hang on.
And,
When you say Brian Blessed, what you mean is...
he's got to get back off from the mic for this.
Brian Blessed!
Thank you, Richard. I'm glad you left the room for that. Yes, Brian Blessed, but he doesn't really shout in The Day After Tomorrow. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, it's available on the Lost Worlds of Gerry Anderson DVD set. If you have seen it, or even if you haven't really, a couple of years ago, Gregory Norris did a novelisation of the opening story, The Day After Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Well, he's done a follow-up.
Oh, great.
Planet Fall.
Nice.
And well, you can guess what happens there, pretty much, although you won't guess everything. That book is out now, together with a new edition of The Day After Tomorrow with lovely, very fancy covers,
Yes.
which look rather smart.
Yes.
They're currently available from Amazon globally, but they will also shortly be available from the Gerry Anderson store. Well worth a read.
Ooh.
So pop along and have a look at those.
Great.
Moving away from live action just for a moment.
Why not?
We've just passed the Secret Service's 50th anniversary, Richard,
Ah.
which was on the 21st of September.
Yes.
The quirky show packed full of unwinnees,
Yeah.
bishops, gardeners,
Yeah.
priests,
Yeah.
housekeepers,
Yeah.
and Model T Fords.
Lovely.
One of Gerry Anderson's most peculiar creations, third only probably, to Candy and Andy and the Investigator, which are both a bit weirder. It's very unusual, it's very sweet, it's very British. If you haven't given it a go, then give it a go.
Yeah.
It's available on DVD. There is an HD episode on HD21 on the Blu-ray sort of taster set. Mm-hmm. And maybe in the future there might be a full Blu-ray. I don't know. We can but hope.
Okay.
But it's very, very sweet. There's a poster available, and there are a couple of other bits that we're doing this year to celebrate, which I'm not able to announce just yet.
Right.
But stay tuned. Keep your eyes peeled.
Okay.
Keep your ears open.
Pinned back, I think is the phrase.
Pinned back.
Yes.
All those things.
Yes. Unplugged.
Unplugged for sure, and that'll be with us very soon. The primers continue on the YouTube channel.
Yes.
Space Precinct has just been out last week, and
Yep.
the one that's just come out this Saturday, I'm not sure of because we're recording this too far in advance. But pop along to youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV. Subscribe there to get notified of new videos 3 or 4 times a week, most weeks. Primers, well, there's loads more primers to come. So if you're on there commenting and saying, where's the primer for Feather Falls? Well, it'll be there in due course. Chris Dale's doing them, bless Randomiser Chris.
Yeah.
There's lots to do, so bear with us, but he's doing a fantastic job, and those primers are doing a wonderful thing, which is to introduce people to Gerry Anderson shows they may not have seen before. Loads of people have been watching the Fire Black Cell 5 video in particular, lots of happy, nostalgic memories, but also people who've never seen it.
Yeah.
So that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
And finally for me, although I feel like Richard might be jumping in with some news, no, he's not, shaking his head. Okay, finally from both of us in that case, the massive Gerry Anderson giveaway.
Yes,
It's still running.
it
but
continues.
It's only running for another 10 days or so from the date of recording, probably slightly less, 8 days.
Yeah.
So you want to get in there. Don't wait. Don't hesitate.
Oh, you'll regret it.
And even if you have entered, make sure you've completed all of the bonus actions to add to your number of entries. There are people who have earned thousands of entries
Right.
by completing those bonus actions, and you can too. The more actions you do, the higher your chance of winning. And don't forget, it's not just the big grand prize of every Gerry Anderson show on DVD, Blu-ray, audio, comic and book, and a multi-region multi-region Blu-ray player, even better. But also, 10 of you will be getting Gerry Anderson gift cards with values between £5 and £100 to spend at the Gerry Anderson store. So, yes, there's actually going to be 11 winners.
Yes.
But only one will get the grand prize.
Amazing. I can't wait for that. And will we be announcing the winner on the podcast or via the website? Or how's that going to happen?
Slightly depends on the dates.
Yes.
I think we will announce everywhere
Yes.
the winner.
Yeah.
And we hope whoever that winner is, that they will share a lovely photo of them covered in all of their winnings.
Amazing.
You know, like when people sort of have thousands of pounds in cash and
Yes.
cover themselves in it in a bed or something.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly the same. You'd be covered in DVDs and Blu-rays.
Do you know, I've done
CDs.
just that once. I filmed a commercial in Amsterdam and I was paid in cash on the day.
Were you?
So I went back to my hotel room. Charlotte was with me, my wife. And because I'd always wanted to do it, I took that brown envelope, took the notes out and chucked them all up, lay back on the bed and they all fluttered down. Yeah.
I didn't think that people really did that.
This was
but,
some time ago. I don't think it would happen now.
Now we know differently. Well,
And then, when I got back to London, of course, I had
Yes.
to visit my agent and give him his 12.5%.
which you'd already been rubbing yourself all over. Goodness me. Well, on that bombshell, that brings us to the end of this week's Gerry Anderson News.
Now, so Sam Dudman has got in touch. You're talking there about people being inspired by the primers. He emailed us, he tweeted us, and hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, saying, I've just received Fireball XL5 on DVD, thanks in part to its primer. Next, it's Supercar. Also, love the podcast. Every Monday, I put the new episode in a playlist called Undercast.
Nice.
Isn't that nice? That's from Sam Dudman. So yeah, do let us know if you've been watching some of the primers that Chris Dale has been recording for us over on the YouTube channel. Let us know if that has either rekindled your love of a particular Gerry Anderson series or introduced you to it for the first time and has tempted you to watch more. Maybe you've ordered the DVD or the Blu-ray. Let us know.
Yeah. I'm sure that the Space Precinct primer will get a few people visiting Space Precinct for the first time.
It is one of those shows, isn't it, that people say, I didn't watch it back in the day, possibly because they may have grown up with the earlier stuff and they were too old for Gerry Anderson, or so they thought, in the 90s. And then they come to it in later life and think, what have I been missing?
Yeah.
That Orin guy is amazing.
I was just waiting for that. Yes, Orin is excellent. But he'd be nothing without Romek.
No, that's true enough.
So
very true. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I hope you've been enjoying everything on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
If you've got any suggestions for stuff you'd like to see there, be they documentary type content, archive material, top 10 countdowns, mashups, clip sequences, highlights, anything like that, we'd love to know what you would like to see. So drop us a line at, you wait for this, YouTube. at gerryanderson.co.uk.
Oh, that's a first.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear from you there.
Yeah.
Or send it to podcast, that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
But either way, we'll get
that's
it.
great. Ooh.
Yes. Now, lots of people send emails to the podcast address, don't they, Richard?
Not off.
Yeah.
Podcast at gerryanderson.co.uk.
That's the exact one that I meant.
Yeah.
Yes, I was shorthanding it to podcast.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But yes, podcast at gerryanderson.co.uk. And in light of the fact that we've recently had the Space 1999 breakaway audio drama out,
Yeah.
all of our emails have been about that audio drama.
Yeah, of course they have.
So should we dip in
Oh, yeah.
and hear the voice of the Podsterons?
Let's let them in now, shall we?
Okay, here they come.
This is the voice of the Podsterons.
Never get over that.
Well, it never gets old, does it, that one? That's great.
Creepy.
Yeah.
I think it might be getting a bit old.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's reconsider.
All right.
Shall we?
Okay. So, yes. Well, I have one here from Simon. So it is all a bit Space 1999-y this week, as you say, a bit breakaway. Greetings, gentlemen, says Simon. Not going to
Hello.
start an argument, he says. Yes, quite right, too. Just a quick email about Big Finish Space 1999. When I first heard this was happening, I was excited and worried, he said.
Me too.
In the end, I went for the special edition from the Gerry Anderson store. I'd listened to the tease, which definitely piqued my interest. As soon as the download was available, I was straight in. Within 30 minutes, says Simon, I was hooked. The theme, the sound design, the acting, all add to a great effort by all involved. And in fact, he listened to it twice on Breakaway Day. As for the breakaway adjustment that we were talking about earlier, that we can't really give too much away, bit of a spoiler.
Yep.
Great piece of work. Love the use of another element from another episode. Great use of current science principles. I heartily recommend any old fans who are very wary about this just to embrace it. Writing this in Luton in a Space 1999 hoodie. Perfect, Simon.
Nice.
Can't get more Space 1999 than that, can you?
No, that's quite right. And yeah, hopefully
Great.
he was following the rules of Luton
Yes.
when he wrote that.
Absolutely. But yes, we absolutely understand the slight trepidation when something, a new angle is given onto a project or a show that we all love. But as Simon said, embrace it.
Yep, absolutely. But Simon's not the only one writing in about Space 1999 Breakaway.
I bet.
Which is nice to hear. Another one here from Michael, who's writing in from Tokyo, in Japan.
Yes, wow.
Dear podcast hosts, writes Michael, my 5-word review of the new Space 1999 audio is Big Finish does it again. So that's nice, isn't it? And he elaborates, I remember the publicity for Space 1999 as well as the US premiere, but I never became a fan despite liking science fiction at 8 years of age in 1975, enjoying reruns of shows such as Star Trek, Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet.
Oh, yes.
Fast forward to the present, where I've been a fan of Big Finish for the better part of a decade. Although I gave them credit for skill in storytelling and courage in their choices up to now, the announcement of redoing this series gave me pause that they might have finally bitten off more than they could chew.
Oh.
In the event, I'm glad I gave them the benefit of the doubt once more. This version has made me a fan, and I'm looking forward to the continuation beginning next year. I've listened to it twice so far.
Yeah.
Once by myself and once with my live-in partner, who also liked it despite not being a fan of the original either.
Oh, brilliant. We've got a convert.
That is marvellous. Congratulations to all concerned, with special thanks to Jamie for his efforts. I'm not sure I deserve those. Regarding the theoretical scientific underpinnings of the principal plot device, as alluded to by Nick Briggs in the behind-the-scenes material. Keep up the good work. Yeah. Now, we can't give away that, but that's one of the things we wanted to solve from the original was, you cannot blow the moon out of Earth's orbit with nuclear explosions. It just would not happen. It would either vaporise the moon or nothing would happen.
Yes.
So we just wanted to have a little tweak there.
Great.
Michael also adds, by the way, a little PS.
Yeah?
As of this writing, I've also just listened to Pod 66 with the first part of Jamie's conversation with Space 1999 fans Samira Ahmed and Kevin Fong. In addition to being informative and engaging, which he has in common with the podcast's other interviews to date.
Yeah.
Bless you, Michael.
Yeah.
It was a much-needed reminder to this Caucasian male of other people's perspectives and experience. Thank you. I eagerly await the rest. In the meantime, my regards to you and yours.
Great.
What a lovely email. Thank you, Michael. That's brilliant.
That's wonderful. Now, if you don't mind me saying, that's just the sort of fan we like. Open to new stuff. We understand it might not be to everyone's taste, but give it a go. These things aren't preserved forever in, amber, are they? They're not caught in time. We can dust them off and give them a little sprinkle of stardust and give them a new life.
Yeah.
And if it's for you, that's great. And if not, well, fine. The old stuff's still there. Yeah. That's what's so wonderful about it.
I was just going to start following your analogy there with being preserved in amber.
Yes.
And we can extract the DNA from the mosquito in the amber
We could do
and then
that.
resurrect them and then they'll run riot. And
And there's a whole new series in and of itself there. That's great. Finally, we've had a lovely email from new listener Dean Harrison. He echoes Michael and Simon's thoughts, and he rounds off his email by saying this. He said, it's great to hear new life breathed into a series that had so much more potential. I hope as you move on with the story of Space 1999 that you will explore the meta story a little more, as it was dropped like a stone in the original series. I'm even wondering if you're hinting the meta might be the source of the UFOs from UFO, as some of the soundscape at the end sounded very evocative of the UFO sound effect.
oh, did it? That's strange. I didn't notice that.
I'm looking forward to you bringing many more stories in the range, if only to find out how you portray the frequently seen bright white void in audio format. Breakaway absolutely blew me away. Cheers from Dean.
Oh, thanks, Dean.
That's great. Well done, Dean, not only being a new listener, but also for your fantastic comments about Space 1999.
Yeah, much appreciated. Now, we should add, we're not on commission here, are we, Richard?
We're not on commission.
Space 1999 says, I wish we were.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But no, it's just that, we both know how much love has been poured into this, and it's just so nice to see the reaction, because it isn't a very important show for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's nice to be reassured that we've done a job that people approve of.
Yes.
It's not going to make everybody super happy. They're not all going to be thrilled with it, but we think the vast majority of people will be. And as Michael said, it actually is able to welcome in brand new fans who never even saw the original show.
Yes.
And that is a great thing.
Yes, who listen to it, and we know have listened to it many times in the past few days.
Yeah, the record I've seen so far is 6 times. Somebody said they did it 4 times on Breakaway Day and 2 the day after.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
We love that. So thank you. And congrats to Big Finish and to Nick Briggs for his fantastic reimagining.
Absolutely right, yeah. Spot on. That's
There
great.
you go. If you'd like to send us an email, it doesn't just have to be, praise, fantastic
Although that
review.
is very welcome, of course.
We do like those things.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Just drop us a line, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, or you can get us messages via other mediums, media,
yes.
like
You think so?
Twitter,
Yes, indeed.
or the Facebook group.
Yes, now over on the Facebook group, Podstron's Facebook group, .com/groups/Podstrons. Abby, for example, has posted some of those, those paint colour strips from her local DIY store, that give you the colours of paint for your house, your room. It says she's asked for her fellow Podstrons to pick their new Captain Scarlet Spectrum agent name. Dave Lawson, who listens to us from Down Under and who we met at Leicester, of course, he's chosen Captain Aurora Borealis. Oh. Joanne Bennett chose Captain Sultry Bay, and Kevin Trott became Captain Dainty Delight. Jamie, it was unanimously decided that you should be Captain Mermaid Cheeks.
Oh, isn't that sweet? What cheeks? Anyway, that's very sweet of everyone. Thanks very much.
Yes, so do join in the fun on the Facebook group. They have screenings and they post funny caption competitions and quizzes and so on. Anyway, it's a very friendly group, and you can just get in quite simply by answering 3 questions. And I personally will let you into the group.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Richard Gatekeeper James
That's me.
will either allow you in or prevent you from
Yes.
getting in.
Yes.
Shall we move on to our feature, Richard?
Oh,
Since Michael and co have already talked about it in the emails.
That's right, we should.
So I had a sit down, not even a chat. I had to sit down while Samira Ahmed and Kevin Fong chatted.
Yeah, you gave them a good listening to, didn't you?
I really did, yes. It was great because they just went off on one, and I occasionally interjected, but for the most part it was just them.
Lovely to hear.
They're talking about just kind of rattling off memories of seeing the show for the first time, revisiting it. Samira's got quite a kind of intellectual, analytical approach to the whole thing. I mean, they're both incredibly bright human beings, and I felt like a complete idiot throughout.
Yes.
Nothing new there, really, but it was especially clear that day. But yeah, let's just join them again for part 2 of 3 of Samira and Kevin having a chat about Space 1999 with me occasionally laughing.
Great.
Here it is.
You can see where this is all going, guys. I mean, really, we're all going to die.
There's an episode when... Is it the one where there's a recital? And there's that guitarist, he's quite famous, Jim something. Got his name.
She's back to her notes again.
No, I've got it. Because he was a really famous session guitarist. He's playing the sitar or something. And it's the one with where that guy gets haunted by his own future ghost. Do you know the one?
I don't.
The Troubled Spirit. Jim Sullivan, Big Jim Sullivan,
okay.
right? In that episode, when they're all at a recital. It's a really highbrow Moonbase. They're all at this classical music recital, and the camera pans, and it's a single shot. It kind of goes through to where this strange thing starts to happen. But I'm sure it's the episode where Paul is just in the, what's it called? Main Mission, and he's just reading a book. They just loved that you'd be on duty and you're just reading a book, and it's obviously something it's a hardback. It's quite highbrow, and I think in Black Sun he's playing his guitar, and Tanya comes in and asks if she can just hang out with him because she's lonely, and I just love these little glimpses into his inner life, and then that one where he has the magic mushrooms.
What?
The one where
there's some episodes that I'm definitely missing.
The one where Atmosphere appears on Moonbase Alpha.
Oh, yeah.
And he starts talking about it like he's a prophet, this manna from heaven, and it's obviously sent him nuts. The Last Sunset.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry, I'll
Samira,
stop.
she's going to show me up
I
completely.
need an outlet
Karen,
for
with
this
all this.
knowledge.
No, it's good.
No, it is great. We've mentioned Master Landau, we've mentioned Prentice Hancock. Again, when we were having coffee before this, you chatted briefly about Victor Bergman as a character and how you didn't necessarily appreciate him at the time.
As a child, I have to confess, I think I did gravitate more towards the series 2 episodes. And I just thought Victor Bergman's character, I don't know, I think because he looked like people I knew, like all my parents' old relatives, that weird, wiry hair. And usually that kind of person would come and grab my cheeks, and all that I hated. So I instinctively just sort of didn't really appreciate him. But rewatching Series 1, he's such an intelligent, thoughtful foil to the other characters. He's a repository of all this intelligence. And I'm trying to think when he would have been born. Would he have been born in the 1920s or 30s? He would have been old enough
in real
to
life.
In terms of how old his character would be to be, 60-something in 1999. He would have been born about 1930-something.
Yeah, probably.
In real life, I know he's much older.
Yeah, in real life, I think he was born in 1918 or something.
But it was such a lovely naturalistic performance.
No, I thought his performance was absolutely brilliant. And that's the thing about Series 1. The crew are much less monoculture. They're sort of, you've got Victor Bergman's character, Bergman's professor, and, who's all about intellectual curiosity and the abstract thoughts about the universe. But, and you've got Commander Koenig, but you've also got Paul, the sort of slightly dour, this is where we are, this is what we're up to.
He's a military man, is Paul, isn't he?
He's a military man. He likes orders, and he sort of sees the impossibility of the mission, but he's going to carry them out anyway. And so that pulls the whole thing in lots of lovely different directions. I agree. Back then, really, if I'm being honest, as a 7, 8-year-old, I kind of want to see Alan Carter jump off the deck in an eagle. I want to see Helena Russell save some lives in the sick bay when been blown up a bit. I wanted to see all of that. But that bit of spin that Victor puts on things, and I remember it particularly from Voyager's Return. Where
such a good episode.
You're watching that, and it's one time where Koenig breaks character with the whatever it takes to save my crew, because there's this probe with a bit of knowledge on it, and it threatens his entire fleet. And instead of saying, proper in character, Koenig would have gone, just blow that out the sky right now. I don't care what it's like. Yeah, just blow it out the sky. Victor manages to convince him that, he said, but what a shame, John, the loss of all that knowledge. And Victor does this weird thing of I'll risk everybody in this space for the prize of that knowledge. And Koenig goes along with him. And so often he does that sort of philosophical musing of, well, what might have been if that hadn't just happened? And so he's a very important character, and you feel his absence in series 2.
Yeah, and he also acknowledges that science doesn't have the answers. Our science might be wrong. And I loved that about, I mean, I think a lot of people, Brian Cox has said this as well, that this is a show that questioned the assumption of 60s science fiction, that science inevitably had an answer and human science would inevitably triumph, that actually we might find ourselves in a terrible situation. Voyager's Return also has another older character played by the late Jeremy Kemp, who only died in, I think, July, who I think was in a lot of great episodes of things like The Avengers, wasn't he, as well? Who is, you know, the tormented scientist, Ernst Queller, who invented the Queller drive.
And he's a fantastic character,
guilt,
isn't he? And that whole dynamic between him and his lab assistant, whose parents have been killed by the original piece of technology, and he's sort of trying to, you know, you get the sense of him as, phew, I've made it onto this moon that's rocketing through the universe and I can leave my past behind me, and then it comes and catches up with him. So I absolutely loved that episode, and I loved the way that Victor, you realise when you watch it now, he's probably one of the few, if maybe the only person in that entire Moonbase Alpha crew who might have been slightly at ease with the idea that you're on this one-way mission now into the unknown. And I loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his kind of sensible science role that crosses into the philosophical was a really nice way to kind of make that plain about the show itself, because it wasn't just a sort of hard sci-fi. There was a deep, dark, thoughtful, philosophical side, whether it's Simmons being trapped in that box and how's he going to die, but also just the meaning of the whole journey and what they're going to find.
Was it Collision Course, when, you know, they're heading to that planet and that old wise woman played by Margaret Leighton says, you have to believe me, you know, this is a moment meant to be. And I know some people are a bit critical of that sort of slightly hippy-dippy thing, but there's something very 70s, very Eastern philosophy. And I was really struck by how many of the aliens wore bindies, you know, like Christopher Lee, and even the turban that Peter Cushing wears, although he's quite an evil character. A lot of them are very sort of, you know, Eastern mystics, aren't they?
That episode, The Exiles, with Christopher Lee as the lead alien, that is
not
The Exiles.
That Earthbound is Christopher Lee. You're thinking of the Peter Duncan episode, The Exiles.
Wow, I'm
He's
sorry.
also wearing a kind of bindi.
I'm sorry, you're right. Earthbound with Christopher Lee as the lead alien. I loved that. And I loved that for the aliens who turn up and they're pretty ambivalent about everything. And then the Alphans go aboard, kill one of their crew. And then what should follow after that is this massive fight between them. But they go, meh, you didn't really know what you were doing. Now we've got a spare seat, so does anyone want it?
And the way that they cast Christopher Lee in that, so your instinct is to think he's probably going to turn out to be, you know, a sinister villain. The flip to that is Mission of the Darians with Joan Collins, which is one of the other episodes I remember the visceral fear that episode gave me when, you know, it's that spaceship they've answered a distress call to, where clearly there's like a tiny core of elite, kind of Eloi, who are feeding off, you know, the sort of Morlocky survivors on the rest of the ship, and they've got them believing in this religion when they have to sacrifice people, and they captured Helena Russell and is it Bill, some, you know, crew member in a purple striped shirt, so you know how that's going to end. And they hold up his hand, and of course I think they've got another person just to hold up the hand, but it was someone who had a shorter finger. And so this idea of the mutant, which crops up in a lot of 70s sci-fi, and therefore he's imperfect and he's sacrificed and turned into food, that terrified the hell out of me.
But the themes were super dark, actually, the underlying thing. And as you say, the idea that you would put some of that stuff out now in this, you know, this stuff was going out on a Saturday morning. You know, basically the thing that followed it was
no trigger warning.
No trigger warning. And it would be followed by Noel Edmonds doing Saturday swap shop in a cardigan. And
although that was another channel, to be fair. In fact, this was one of the few things I'd watch on ITV, because there was definitely a whole stigma about ITV being a bit.
Were you a BBC household?
Yeah, my mother worked for the BBC in the 70s. She presented Asian programming on BBC Two. And I don't know why, it wasn't like a conscious thing, but I know there was this perception that ITV was down market and somehow...
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, there are a lot of people
apart from certain shows.
Yeah. Although you're right, it was Tiswas versus Saturday Swap Shop. Yeah. Anyway, it's...
And the sitcoms on ITV could be really nasty. Like, I will say this again, On the Buses had a nasty, sexually predatory... casually racist air that some of the casual racism on other channels didn't feel so offensive. There's something about some of the ITV sitcoms that was really nasty.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot, though, of 1970s sitcom that doesn't bear up to modern inspection.
Which is another reason why when Space 1999 comes out, and, let's talk about Kano, the computer expert. It was such an interesting character in Series 1. I know people sometimes say the characters weren't developed that much, but actually you had these great episodes where you just got glimpses into the way he thinks, and, computer can't be wrong. And he doesn't say the computer, he calls it computer. Its name. I was really fascinated by that relationship.
No, I loved it. And that's, coming back to the original point, I'm very pleased that, your dad would have celebrated the fact that we feel like this about the level of diversity. It's a real thing. I felt it at the time. I feel it today. That it's a big, it's a big thing to assume that 20 years into the future from the point at which it was made, that actually you're going to have a society developed well enough that the equality of opportunity across the board is going to be such that this is going to be broadly crewed by a representative culture of people. Because, let's face it, at the time, that's not what was happening.
Although not that many, although we're very fond of characters like Sandra Benesch, wasn't that often she got a chance to really show what she could do. And I think she was the first, so she did a lot of first to faint, last to get up.
Screaming and fainting,
Screaming and fainting. Although I did love the one, I know she had to wear a sort of leopard skin, sort of Drakel Welsh style bikini, but that one where they've all been turned back into Neanderthals. They go into that planet, they go into that cloud. And she's sort of captured by one of them. I thought at least she was sort of centre stage and having a good time. But
it's actually, you don't know, or at least I don't think I noticed that so much, that okay, in truth, the hierarchy in terms of the
Full Circle. That's the episode. Just remembered. Sorry,
I really thought that was a slightly dodgy episode, Full Circle. But anyway, but I'm not sure that I noticed that so much, because the truth is that the hierarchy in terms of performance, and this is sort of acting hiring, was still that thing of basically the diverse cast generally got less big roles, but even the idea conceptually that actually these senior positions would be occupied by these people, to me, was really important. And to me, they were interchangeable. And so, so I thought, I could be a Sandra, but I could be a Helena Russell, but I could be an Alan Carter. And it seems to be, whether you're a man or a woman, or wherever you've hailed from in the world, you can occupy a place here. And I probably could be a Commander Koenig as well. And that's the important messaging to a child, independently of whether or not, of course, you're going to represent the biases that are intrinsic to that workforce at that time in the acting credentials. But the representation of the story to me was very important, And you know what? I reckon unconsciously or consciously, it is probably why I ended up being driven towards science, because I thought, oh, well, there's the equality of opportunity.
Yeah. And again, we hear that all the time. And we've talked about this before. Now, people at NASA, loads of them say they ended up working there and getting interested in space and science in general because of Space 1999. And we hear people who work in AI and marine biology and medicine and all sorts of stuff. They were inspired by that and fascinated by it. But how does, a sci-fi show on a Saturday morning grab you that much that it changes your path?
I think it's because it did everything right. One, it took itself seriously, and every detail was done seriously. So the special effects were beautiful in their own right. The set design was amazing. And I watching, because I watched 48 episodes quite close together and revising for Mastermind, and I was really struck by how beautiful that world was. And it was all real. So all the set pieces, they were Italian moulded plastics that were the cutting edge. And I know now plastic is very much out of fashion, but actually watching the way that set was put together, I thought, I aspire to this. It's embracing the new. And to think it was shot during the 3-day week, when Britain was kind of in a semi-Victorian crisis, it's so visionary. And it's the only show that I genuinely played games on. So I used to mix together elements of different sci-fi. So I used to construct this moon base alpha that drew on elements on the Andromeda strain. They had a kind of decontamination unit in case they met an alien virus. Elements of 2001 with those empty corridors, which I know was a big influence because Brian Johnson had worked on it. But also I would just drop things on it and it would be destroyed, and then they'd have little medical things going around, kept getting my little tiny... I used to use board game counters so I could make a big enough one, and they'd have to be kind of taken off to medical bay. There would never be enough bays because it was just like the NHS today, just like Space 1999. But also my cousin Bobby and my sister Sarah and I used to play Space 1999, and we had these, it wasn't quite the sophisticated furnishings of Space 1999, but we had these convertible sofa beds. So it was like a little sofa and you just pulled it out and turned to bed, and we used to turn it into a capsule, and I used to be Maya, and Bobby used to be Commander Koenig, and my sister used to be usually Sandra Benesch, but occasionally Helena Russell. And we used to just create this room, and we used to be I don't know, I can't remember any of our adventures. None of us died screaming asphyxiated and earthbound, but it genuinely was the game that I played. And
I have very clear memories of doing that. My dad had a little motorbike, and it was a real putt underpowered thing, but he had this bright orange helmet, which no doubt they sold him because no one else wanted to buy it because it was bright orange. But that I appropriated and wrecked in the garden, pretending to be various eagle pilots.
How did you wreck it?
Oh, well, just smacking it around in the garden, basically. You had to have lots of big crashes. Yeah. and equally, the great thing about that series was throw on a tracksuit and a polo neck and an orange helmet and you were any character in that programme. So it was absolutely fantastic. And again, when we were talking about this, before, but I realised that having grown up in the 70s, that, Gerry Anderson productions of one type or another were the entire backdrop, because I was thinking, well, what is there? There's Thunderbirds, there is UFO, there is Stingray, there is Terrorhawks. The entire period that I would have been watching children's television, there was always a Gerry Anderson production there. And so, it features so heavily both in my experience of watching stuff and the toys that I had that, I feel very shaped by that whole franchise.
There's two aspects to it that I think are essential, and one is that it was a world of adults, and I think I give a talk in schools, particularly to girls, about how Disney heroines in the 90s were all adult women. They met their partner at work, like in Mulan. And Frozen, if you look at them, they're like little girl children with boobs and giant eyes and sexualised children, and they're only shown role models who are a few years older than them. And the thing about Space 1999 and all Gerry Anderson shows was, admittedly, they were all smoking and drinking at the same time, but you just felt, you had an adult world to aspire to, and there's adult voices. And Thunderbirds Are Go is still one of my favourite movies of all time. And I love the idea that Alan wants to go night clubbing with Lady Penelope, and isn't allowed. And I just thought, this is what we should be aspiring to. It's, it's a whole grown-up world. It's not just literally being a train driver. And I was saying to you, one of the earliest dreams I have, I remember being about 2 or 3 years old. Captain Scarlet was on a lot. And I had an elder brother, so he was into all the toys. And I just remember having a dream in which I was one of the angels, and I was a pilot, and I was in the uniform, and I had the helmet, and I was in the cockpit, and it was, oh my God. And I woke up, and my heart sank that I wasn't really an angel. And so if you said to me, Samira, what's the first thing you ever wanted to be before wanting to be a journalist or anything, it was I wanted to be an angel pilot.
And the toys are interesting because, again, the first toy I remember getting for a birthday, I must have been about 4 or 5, was a UFO toy, from the UFO series, which, had this bullet-sized thing on the front that fired at quite a rate of knots off the front. I didn't even know what that series was, and later on I had
people big fans of it.
But at the time I didn't know, and I had a model kit because I bought a model plane that was an Angel Interceptor plane. Didn't know what that was, but built it. And the interesting thing about that is that's how much I think it was part of the culture of the time, that you could have these items that your parents would see and think, I should get that for my son, daughter, without them knowing what it is, without you knowing what it was, but it's sort of absorbed into, okay, obviously this is what's going on right now, this is what I'm going to play with, and not even knowing that it's part of this much wider sort of empire of sort of science fiction. And so, in retrospect, Space 1999, but also all the other Gerry Anderson productions were much, much more important and influencing me throughout my childhood than I really thought at the time.
And of course, I mean, my son is now 20 and he grew up with Thunderbirds in particular. He got a costume and everything. He had all the toys. And it's been something that parents have shared with their children. It's a world that you can enter. And it's weird because it's sort of a period world because it sort of has a certain kind of 60s aesthetic. And yet because it's set in a kind of future, it's timeless.
Yeah, retrofuturism is pretty timeless, especially when it's made with such love, when it's the puppetry or the model work.
And the voice work is really good. I actually met Ed Bishop once. We were talking about how Space 1999 never had enough appreciation to ever quite get, one of those kind of big retrospectives at the BFI, and which is such a shame. But they did screen a weird double bill about early 90s. I remember I was working at Newsnight and I took a producer who didn't know what this was, and they screened an episode of UFO and an episode of Star Maidens. I'm still not quite sure why, because Star Maidens wasn't Gerry Anderson, but obviously I think Keith Wilson designed it.
Yeah.
And Ed Bishop came to talk about it. And the episode they showed of UFO, which is the only episode I've ever seen, and I'm very conscious I want to go and fill this gap, was the one where it's a girl who's been in a coma, I think, since the 1970s.
Yeah.
And there's been some kind of, obviously, alien abduction or alien impact. And it was incredibly creepy and eerie. And what I loved, and I realised Gerry Anderson shows, live action shows could do very well, is capture something that was in the air of the era. And there was this whole thing about cults, about hippies, about the counterculture, and turn it into quite unsettling science fiction. I love that.
The other thing about Space 1999, I can never say Space 1999. I'm never sure how many 1999s, 1990.
You could
Space
quite say
1999. Yeah.
That's easy to say.
The other thing about Space 1999 is they did think fairly carefully about what the possibilities were here. And, they didn't just, they had a bunch of people who worked on the life support, and that was a finite resource, and they had a sick bay, and they had power problems, and the communicators and the way all of that was done, you thought that's probably how you do it. And even right down to the these double sliding doors, because there had to be bulkheads in this pressurized sort of facility. And I kind of loved that, and I kind of loved now looking back, knowing about life support, now knowing about what your medical provision would be, actually thinking, do you know what, this isn't terribly bad. This is probably about right.
And it was all achievable. I love the fact that even just dating it 2 years before 2001 put it into our century. And so little things like, I remember the first time I got on one of the new tube trains that runs on the District line. They've been running for about 5 years now, and basically you can walk from one end right down to the other. All the carriages are open. And I got on and I thought, I'm in the Travelator from Space 1999. Jesus, I really, just the flashback effect of it.
I remember growing up, I grew up on the Metropolitan line, and big chunky trains that looked more like overground trains. I remember very clearly being excited when I was in London and be on the Piccadilly line, because oh look, it's a round hole, it's like the travel tube.
Yeah, the travel tube, sorry, the Travelator, it's the travel tube. But there was one other thing, is I'm thinking again, it must have been just before the series launched. There was a Selfridges walkthrough experience, and they used to do them. They were like summer equivalents of the Christmas Grotto. And they did a Planet of the Apes photo opportunity, which my brother went to, where you stood with two guys in suits. But they put a load of the sets from Space 1999 into a room with the clicks and the computers and the beautiful Italian plastic desk lamps, the monitors. And I walked through it. And again, going back to the set design, I think what I really loved was this felt like the office of the future. And I always think of the clicking, the way that Sandra and you could argue I was the women always typing, but Sandra and Maya would be just sorting up formulae and things. And even I remember when I got my first Bluetooth keyboard to go with my iPad, I was just thinking, I'm a little bit Sandra. So all those little things I take such joy in when they've become real.
But the sets between Series 1 and Series 2, the set changes so radically. And actually, my memory of Space 1999 is that big, open, beautiful set, and Mission Control being about the size of a real Mission Control. And until I rewatched it, I hadn't realised Series 2 basically happens out of something the size of your living room.
I know.
A bunker. And you're just like...
And it's a bunker, isn't it? It's horrible.
And it just doesn't work in the same way.
And you could see the connection. So Commander Koenig had that room that was off the main thing. And I think, again, if you look at Next Generation, I think they copied so much from this show. Yeah. The cerebral commander, he has his ready room or whatever right next door to the main command centre. But I just loved all the space. I always wondered what went on upstairs. There was a balcony.
Yes.
And people were always running up and down it. But you thought, what did he do up there? It was designed like one of those 60s Scandi houses, wasn't it? Like the Brady Bunch, where there was big open staircases and a lot of space. And it did, the episode where it's raining outside? I can't remember quite why. It must be because there's an atmosphere. It's the last sunset. And you just felt like they could just open the window.
Did they not open the windows?
They probably did in that. But the windows also cracked surprisingly easily.
Yeah.
It was a fairly fragile base. I'm still upset about... I started counting the number of Eagles that had blown up, because I'm sure you blow up more than 27 over the series.
They had all those other spaceships that crash landed that they would have cannibalised, plus they had the Quella Drive thing.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an alien ship that they keep when the companion dies in... the one with Liam McKern, that spaceship that lands.
They definitely pick up quite a lot of stuff, but I started sort of taking...
They'd be like the Wombles, they'd have been sifting through it.
I reckon on average they lose at least one Eagle every other episode, and then I was just sort of gently counting them up, and then I watched Space Warp where they lose an entire hangar, because Maya gets in there and basically goes on a joyride with an Eagle in a hangar, and
that's such a great sequence.
It's a great sequence, and but then at that point I'm like, there can't be any more spaceships left, surely.
It's weird because, again, I think back to my childhood games and destroying it and then desperately trying to save lives. There's something of the 70s, it is the whole winter of discontent. I know it was yet to come, and the 3-day week, the sense of building out a disaster, which is very British. And I think the 70s was marked by a fascination with the Blitz spirit. If you think about all those shows like Jane's UXB, those World War II shows, Colditz was a 70s show. I think maybe we were still in the Blitz spirit in the 70s, and we needed to be.
So there's a fascinating episode that I made that observation, which is the one where there's two planets that can't see each other.
Oh, The Last Enemy.
The Last Enemy.
I knew that without looking.
And The Last Enemy, where there's a
Bob
sequence where
Planet Beta and Delta.
they're being shelled. Moonbase Alpha is being shelled. Yes. And they all lie on the floor. But watch it again. Victor Bergman lies on the floor and does his blitz drill where he has his mouth open so it doesn't, because when you're being shelled by explosives, you have to put your hands on your head and then open your mouth so you don't get the overpressure bursting your eardrums. That's kind of, and he does it, and he totally goes into blitz mode. Watch it. Wow. He's the only one who does it, because of course he has a very clear memory of that being his age at the time.
Because there's definitely one, and it might be the AB Chrysalis when they're being hit by a shockwave, and it's like everyone, ready yourself for impact. And some of them, like Commander Connie, just sort of kneel down near a desk and sort of vaguely do that. And you think, what kind of emergency drill is that?
Yeah.
It's not exactly duck and cover.
No.
Hey, can I mention some more casual sexism? Because there was one episode, I've mentioned the porn episode, do go and look it up, it's really there. It was the episode Dorzak, which in many ways is good. It's Lee Montague, it's this really sinister, he's another survivor of Psychon, and he's a war criminal. And he's on a planet, it's on a spaceship, which is run by... It was like a real 70s glamour magazine idea of sexy alien ladies. And their spaceship is sort of like, it's like a lair from a 1970s James Bond film. It's got 3 women in sort of negligees, one of whom is compelled to open up his prison and engage with him. And it's all decorated with kind of, those white fake animal rugs. I mean, it's so cheesy soft porn. And they're all a bit stupid. Although there's the one who falls in love with Alan, who's sort of the intelligent one. But
with good taste.
It's the one that just looked like a really bad male fantasy, and to be fair, it's one of the few which looks that obviously so. But I remember cringing at the look of it. They're all a bit... Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I think the sci-fi of the era...
Who's the writer? Who can I blame for this?
The sci-fi of the era was plagued by that. I mean...
Christopher Penfold, shame on you.
And it hadn't quite made that corner turn, interestingly, hasn't it? Because it had made some of the corner turn on the diversity in terms of both gender and race, but it hadn't quite fully made that turn. And in fact, actually, if you compare it to things that follow, yes, no, I think that's absolutely true.
Ingrained.
But it is, it's sort of that beginning of a watershed, because like this is happening. It goes, and that was the interesting thing. It goes into production quite early in the 70s, doesn't it? I think since 73, and so that was the interesting thing, that actually it's following hard on the heels of basically this sort of Austin Powers-like decade and coming into this thing. So in some ways, I think those observations are absolutely fair.
It's what dates it.
It's what dates it.
It's an episode that you can date to the mid-1970s in a glamour magazine pose way.
One of only few.
One of very few.
Yeah. One of very few, and I agree with you, and it's one of those few disappointing things which don't make it quite as timeless as it would otherwise be. But, it's an interesting mishmash, really, of these very advanced visions and ideas of what an ideal of society would be against 1970s sort of producers.
In the same way that Star Trek, it just keeps being undermined by this refusal to accept that a woman might be a genuine equal in space.
Do you think there's any sci-fi series of the time that achieved that, though, of that period?
Well, the original pilot, of course, for Star Trek would have had number 1 played by the actress who went on to be Nurse Chapel, Majel Barrett.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
But was that exec?
And they didn't like it. They didn't like this strong, cold woman.
But that's the point, isn't it?
I can tell you now, women still get told on television all the time, could you be a bit warmer? They never say this to men. Sorry, casual observation.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I think probably some of that came from ITC New York, because they were driving a lot of the development. They were the ones that brought in Martin and Barbara to get into the networks and that kind of thing. And obviously they, along with Fred Freiberger, were the ones driving to get Catherine
Martin
Schell.
Landau, who'd been approached to play Spock, and told me he turned it down because he felt it was a character without emotion, and actually made the one big error. I mean, I had a major crush on Nimoy Spock, so I'm not complaining that he turned it down. But I think he misunderstood. The whole joy about these characters is supposedly they have no emotion, but of course they do. It's a matter of when it's released and how.
I know. I remember reading that. What do you think he would have been like as a Spock?
Well, if you think about him in North by Northwest, with those amazing eyes. I mean, you think of what he looked like in the 50s and 60s.
I could instantly imagine it. I mean, sometimes you can't see it because, like the Tom Selleck might have been Indiana Jones, apparently, and I could never, ever see that. But I could see Martin Landau's Spock.
There's something unearthly about him.
There absolutely is. And that ability to be inscrutable, with this fire burning inside him. I think he could have pulled it off, really, but... And
those episodes when Spock does cry, and, Martin Landau's ability to... There's an episode where, he's haunted by the ghosts of friends he abandoned near Venus on a space station who caught that horrible illness. And he's just crying. And, it's all coming out from just his method acting. There's nothing in that script particularly to draw on that. And that level of acting, I just felt... I know he went on to make... I remember asking him about it. He was in Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, which was a kind of real career low. And I think he knew he had to make better films. And then you look at things like Tucker and the Bela Lugosi film he did, Ed Wood.
Yeah.
I mean, God, what an actor.
No, he's an incredible actor. And in fact, actually, he's responsible for a lot of the success of what that series was, the power of his performance.
But, of course, as Nick Tate told me, there was also a feeling that he was insecure and he demanded much of the action. So we haven't talked about what many people think is the best episode ever, which is Dragon's Domain.
I was about to say, we've made it nearly 55 minutes in without a single mention. It was worth
waiting for. So Dragon's Domain, which everyone I know who's in science or in science special effects, like Paul Franklin raves about, is this incredibly deep philosophical episode, which is basically a remaking of Beowulf. This monster that someone escaped and then it comes back for you and will you die? And I forgot what I was going to say about Martin. Oh, yeah, so Nick Tate said that episode was supposed to be for him, but he ended up being hit on the head repeatedly and is unconscious in medical centre, and it's Martin Landau who gets to kill the beast at the end. I don't know what light you can shed on this.
No, I can't directly, but I know a lot of the time from the leads there was a lot of pressure on the production team and on Dad in particular, that they didn't want to be overshadowed by people. Martin was always keen to be the hero and not be overshadowed.
Alan was the heartthrob, I think. I remember my sister having a huge crush on him. Yeah. He was, I think, until they rejigged Series 2, I think he was that main romantic.
Yeah, he was the hero, but I think Martin was okay with that because Martin was still the overall commander and the most powerful one. But Barbara Bain was the same, I think. I mean, when she heard that Catherine Schell was going to be cast, she was deeply, deeply unhappy. And she approached Dad and said, look, if this girl's been brought in because she's someone's girlfriend or something, then I'm going to have something to say about it. And Dad said, no, we know it's something that ITC want, but we're going to properly cast. And she said, yeah, are you though? Or are you just bringing in someone you already know and like? And she was really hypersensitive. But once she got to meet Catherine and understand what the character was, she was less threatened and it was okay. But I think that was a roller coaster they were on all the time. Where the leads were
and also they were older too, because by that point in their careers, Barbara and Martin were, I'm guessing, were they 40-ish or certainly late 30s? So they're not obvious romantic leads anymore. It's a tricky position to hold. And I will say again, Catherine Schell's performance, I mean, she does so much to vindicate Series 2. She's so intelligent and she's at the heart of all the action. And I cannot emphasise enough what a role model she was.
And she's one of the few characters around which entire story arcs revolve in Series 2, because one of the tricks they do miss, and I do think this is a fair criticism of it, is that they've got all these wonderful characters and you could have had entire stories, as you did in later episodes of Star Trek, revolving around, less central characters. You could have had a story, you could have had a story about Paul, you could have had a story about Alan Carter, you could have had a story about any one of these people, and it could have revolved around them with Koenig on the periphery. But it's very clear now, that actually it was always going to be focused on these two main characters. What I did find interesting was the way that they played out the romantic stuff. There was none of that will they, won't they. They were all formed couples, weren't they? So Dr. Russell and Commander Koenig were always a couple.
No, it wasn't made explicit until Series 2, and then,
Is that right?
Yeah, I think Freiberger made it more explicit then. Otherwise it was sort of implicit and it was hinting that way.
So I've had an idea, Jamie.
Have you?
Yeah, well, you needn't bother turning up next time, did you?
Oh, bless you, Richard.
Just leave them to it.
I mean, I could quite happily do that because they knew their stuff.
Yes.
They loved it. They bounced off each other.
Yeah, what's so nice is because, very often we're interviewing people, who are involved in various projects throughout the years with your dad, and they have to be prompted, don't they, to get the memories flowing. Sometimes they don't remember stuff at all. So how nice just to be in a room with people who just want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Great. Yeah, really nice.
No, they were great. And there's one more part to come. I mean, I think we heard there that Kevin had... Well, in fact, Kevin wasn't sure he'd seen Dragon's Domain, which then normally means you haven't seen it.
Yes.
He subsequently emailed me and said, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
I had never seen it. I've just watched it.
Yeah.
It's amazing and terrifying. So even as an adult,
That's right.
for seeing it for the first time,
God.
but I can't believe he missed it.
That's
the one
odd.
that everybody references,
Yeah.
and yet he'd never seen it.
No, that's odd, isn't it? Well, what a treat for him to discover it now. I envy him in a way.
Yeah,
That's
he's very
great.
happy. And we have discussed the potential for once a year having a get-together, the three of us,
Yeah.
watching an episode of Space 1999 and doing a kind of live
Brilliant.
commentary,
That's a
feedback
great
to
idea.
it.
It's a great idea. Breakaway day every year. Why not? You could
Well,
do that
there
in
is one every
September.
year.
Well, I know, but you could do it for Breakaway Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's lovely. Great. So, third part next week.
Third part next week,
Mm-hmm.
and then we've got Ray Earl coming up. Poor Ray, who's been a bit pushed back because of all the Space 1999 shenanigans.
Yeah.
She's big on Captain Scarlet and,
Yeah.
many other Anderson shows, in fact, but Scarlet's the main one. In fact, and she defends the actions of Spectrum and the attitude of Colonel White quite a lot.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, and we also played Snog, Marry, Avoid
Okay. Right, of course you did.
for Spectrum members. So, anyway, that's all to look forward to in a couple of weeks' time.
Absolutely. And I must get in touch with Gavin Robertson, of course, who we know from Thunderbird's FAB stage show back in the day, because he tweeted this week that he, after a full day of working with some drama students, he said, "I'm off to London to celebrate 30 years since the first opening night of Thunderbird's FAB, the stage show, at the Apollo Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue. Not seen the gang in about 18 years. So, talking to podcast guests, I really must get in touch with Gavin, because it'd be interesting to get him and Andy Dawson together and talk about how that came about. Those of you that don't know, back in the, 30 years ago, 80s,
Yep.
Gavin and Andy formulated a two-man Thunderbirds stage show, which played in the West End and all over the world, the Far East and Australia and so on. Huge success. They were on Blue Peter with it. Some of you I know saw it. And
I did.
The classic image, of course, is of the two guys with the models on their head, made by Richard Gregory, I understand.
They were, yeah.
The Thunderbird 2 and the Thunderbird 1. Played a small part in it myself. I did it for about 5 weeks towards the end of its life. So it'd be very interesting to get them in the podcast to talk about their experiences.
They're up for it.
Well, I'll see what I can do. And judging by my previous record on getting guests to the podcast, I wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay, but they have agreed.
Yeah, great.
so
Okay, I'll drop him a line.
It's one that even you can't screw up, Richard.
Yeah, you might be right. Just watch me. Great.
But you've been looking forward to, Richard.
Your special Quickfire 5
Well,
that you've put
This week, no, it's not even mine. We've got a Podsterons Quickfire 3, as inspired by my Quickfire 3 last week.
Yeah, okay, great.
So, here we go. It's protagonist-based.
Right.
Favourite Stingray era protagonists?
Yes.
It's the era, not the show necessarily. Paul Starr from Roberta Lee's Paul Starr.
Right.
Or Troy Tempest from Stingray.
Oh, I mean, it's got to be Troy Tempest.
Good choice.
It really does.
Even though Paul Starr was voiced by Ed Bishop.
Yes, that's right, it was.
Favourite protagonist from Gerry Anderson Curio, The Investigator.
Oh, crikey.
John or Julie?
Oh, how do I answer that? I've never seen it.
Well, if I say John was voiced by Shane Rimmer.
Oh, come on. There's your answer.
There we go, John it
Yes.
is. And favourite commanding protagonist,
Right.
Captain Scarlet's Colonel White, or the Secret Service's Bishop.
Oh, I love Colonel White.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
How does he feel about that? That's the end of
Stop, marry, avoid.
your Quickfire 3. That's from Ash, who has emailed in. And by the way, he really appreciates your use of the word groovy last week.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's only 14.
Ah.
He uses groovy too.
There you go.
Thanks, Ash.
The campaign starts here. Let's bring it back into everyday parlance. And let's bring back the word parlance as well while we're at it.
Okay, groovy parlance. Oh dear.
Yeah, fun and games. You're listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Here we are. There you are. Don't forget to subscribe to us on whichever platform you're listening to us on. Rate, review and share so your friends can hear us too. You can email us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Hashtag us Gerry Anderson podcast so we see your tweets. And join the Facebook group. Facebook.com.
Don't have to.
Well, yeah. /groups/podsterons.
If they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't have
It's all there if you want it. If not, it's fine.
Now, something that they all want
Yeah.
is Chris Dale's randomizer.
Of course it is.
Yes. So if you don't know what the randomizer is, you're about to find out. But
Yeah.
it's an episode-by-episode journey through 60 years plus of Gerry Anderson shows. Chris chooses the map random using a rather marvellous machine. I assume it was built by Brains or
Yeah, it must have been.
or Mathematic or somebody like that. I don't know.
that's
But
right.
it picks a random Gerry Anderson episode and he travels the Gerry Anderson universe, finding people to press the big red button. So should we let him do that?
I think we should.
Here he goes.
Oh, I say, Marina, look at that beautiful planet over there. Isn't that just so lovely and pretty?
Hello out there.
Oh, hello, this is Eagle 13. who is that?
This is Ultima Thule. We have a life here. A long life that you could share.
Oh, well, that's very decent of you. Sorry, Ultima Thule, 1 second. I have another call coming through. Hello, who is that?
I am Mentor of the planet Psychon.
Uh-huh. And I take it you too are inviting us to visit your planet?
I'll instruct you where to land.
Yes, I can't actually see the planet Psychon anywhere. Marina, check the sensors.
I can't do it, Skipper. Computer can't recognize any of the stars out there.
Oh, that's... Wait a second, you're not... Oh, 3 of them. I didn't know when I was well off.
No, sir. All 13!
What? Who are you?
13.
Macy? What are you doing?
13.
Wait a minute. 13 Brian Blesseds at the same point in space and time. Well, that'll mean a massive sonic disruption that could tear apart the entire... The ship! It's falling apart! Oh, it was all a dream. Oh, everything's okay. I'm okay. I'm in my bed, on the Eagle, and everything's fine. Oh, what a relief.
Easy, sweetheart. Are you all right?
Yes, Brian, Brian, before I start screaming, please tell me you have an episode selection printout for me.
Supernova.
Supernova, is it? Right, that's a Lavender Castle episode, isn't it? Right, so, well, here's that. And scream time commences now.
Lavender Castle, a place of legend, fabled right across the universe. This is our quest to find it.
So here we go with some more Lavender Castle, and oh yeah, I'm always glad to see this series come up because, as most of you probably know, this is a series that I am really basically unfamiliar with. So this is my first time through most episodes of this show, and so far, I think we've had 3 so far, and I've enjoyed them all. I think this year is 2019 on the Randomiser has very much been the year of Fireball and Lavender Castle, and yeah, so far, I'm surprised actually at how much I'm enjoying both. Let's see if Supernova... They seem to have updated the titles actually a bit since I last saw this show. Oh, yeah. Definitely updated at the end there. Yeah, let's see how this episode holds up. Aegon's great big ship is closing on a star that looks, what I would guess, about ready to go supernova, since that's the title of the episode.
The light. I'm going to switch this one off. All I have to do is create a chain reaction and the sun will destroy itself.
Oh, well this is a fairly fiendish villain plot, especially for a Gerry Anderson villain. He's just like, oh, that sun's in my eyes. I'm gonna blow it up. That's very cool. It's a very cool villainy thing to do. I can think of another villain who wanted to do that.
That's better. How wonderful it would be if the whole universe were without light.
Oh, some beautiful animation in the show. Just at the end of Aegon's line there, he did this sort of wiggle with his eyebrows. It's like, oh, know what I mean? Universe without light? Hey.
Dr. Aegon.
Nothing but darkness, Trump. Wonderful.
You're doing a very good job in the White House. Yeah, isn't that odd that we have a Gerry Anderson character with that name? And I'm going to try not to make that connection because...
Where's that light coming from?
To be blunt, he doesn't deserve that honour.
It's
Ooh,
Lavender Castle.
Lavender Castle, we found it.
The bringer of light.
I see Lavender Castle.
Oh goody, we found it.
It is Lavender Castle.
That didn't take as long as I thought it would. Although, obviously, not knowing the show, I don't know if this is the first time I've actually run across it.
We've got to stop him.
So I guess Aegon's going to try and blow it up
Shall we
now.
go over it once again?
Yes. I'm going to fly to Lavender Castle.
Hide in a tree and tell me...
When it's near a sun,
Then I will blow it up and...
it will vaporize Lavender Castle.
Brilliant!
Why don't you just fire on it right now?
My pet.
Oh, smack Trump. Yeah.
Mr. Sproggle, sir, isn't that Dr. Aegon's falcon I can see?
Oh, it's flying towards Lavender Castle.
No doubt part of Aegon's plan to destroy the castle.
Now let's see. He'll have to...
I've still got my time... No, I haven't got the time machine anymore.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
No. Oh, where have you gone? Oh, wow, we're actually seeing what Lavender Castle is really like. We're here. We're on it. There's a tree.
Is there a sun nearby?
Oh, I wouldn't have expected that they'd ever get anywhere near it, except for the final episode, maybe.
Excellent. Let me know when it's close enough. Then I'll vaporize it.
Right.
Has there been any thought given to the planets that were plunged into darkness by the first sun he blew up?
Sure he won't hear his friend either.
We're not going to dwell on that. This is a 10-minute children's show. I mean,
Hear me?
Who's that?
we'll hope nobody was on those worlds.
Admira.
Admira?
You're not going to let Dr. Aegon destroy that beautiful place, are you?
Oh, yes. We're going to vaporize it.
Tell me, do you like Dr. Aegon?
Yes, I do. Except when he calls me Trump.
He calls you Trump? How cruel. Does he always abuse you like this? And where will you be when he vaporizes Lavender Castle?
Who would name
Here, of course.
their pet Trump?
Why, that dirty rat. I'll be vaporized too. I'm going back. I'll peck his eyes out.
Wait! Stay where you are. Lavender Castle will look after you. And you won't be called Trump anymore.
Yes.
Trump, my pet.
My God. If you ever tuned into the Gerry Anderson podcast expecting to get away from the word Trump, I'm sorry, we've got a lot of it this week. Anyway, Lycra's convinced Trump to,
It's worked!
well, that Aegon is going to blow up Lavender Castle while he's still on
Just
it.
say the word.
Oh, I thought we'd fooled him.
Master, the sun is close enough now.
10 seconds. Lavender Castle will be no more. 9.
Please listen to me, little bird.
8.
You can't let him do this.
7.
You'll die in the explosion.
6.
He doesn't care about you.
5.
Oh,
He doesn't care about anybody.
This is very sweet that we have the good guys trying to talk the villain's hench bird
No one will be able to see anymore.
out of destroying the source of all light in the universe. Have they succeeded? Oh. Well, the sun's gone over. Oh, looks like Dr. Aegon has succeeded in roasting Lavender Castle. Oh. Oh. Oh, it's okay. It's okay, everybody. Lavender Castle's still there.
You misjudged the distance of that sun, didn't you? I hope that wasn't intentional, Trump.
Don't call me Trump. You were going to let me fly, weren't you?
I'll get on Twitter and start yelling at you in all caps.
Oh, no!
Oh, and Lavender Castle has just faded away.
Oh, well done, Leica. Well done, Isambard.
Dr. Aegon!
Not you, Sproggle. You haven't done anything.
They brainwashed you, my little pet. You don't really think I would have vaporized you?
Yes, I do.
Of course you're upset. But as a consolation prize, I'm going to destroy the paradox. How fortunate that they are so close to that sun.
We've got to get out of here. We're too close to that sun. If Aegon explodes it...
We'll never get far enough away in time. We've had it, Captain.
Oh, okay. Well, you could at least try to get away. You seem very resigned to your fate there.
Crazy?
What's your name again? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Roger! Roger, that's your name. I was going to say Jeff. Jeff wouldn't give up like that. That's not in the Code of International Rescue. Whoa! So Roger has just opened the door of Lavender Castle, of the Paradox. I keep making that mistake. Just leaned out, fired off a cannon, and pretty much destroyed the front half of Dr. Aegon's ship. And to be fair, there's some reasonably good CGI work.
You would have vaporized me, wouldn't you?
I wish I had, Trump.
Don't call me Trump.
If I want to call you Trump, I'll call you Trump.
Oh, Dr. Aegon has now been sucked out into space. Trump finds this very funny. Because Trumps have a very odd sense of humour. Anyway, that was Supernova, and considering that it is only just now sort of sinking into my brain what I actually watched, that was reasonable. I like that we got to see Lavender Castle. I like that I found out that Trump is not all bad. Unlike his real life namesake. Probably not the best of the 4 Lavender Castles I've seen so far, but still a very sweet, charming, and inventive little series. Looking forward to more.
Lavender Castle's very sweet, isn't it?
It is very sweet.
Even if the baddie's trying to blow up a sun.
Yeah, in a sweet way.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love Dr. Aegon's little parody thing.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes.
Well, no, let's not mention his name.
No, all right.
But it's funny how many kind of scheming baddies in the Gerry Anderson universe, right into the 90s and beyond, had German accents.
Yeah, funny that.
Like It Star in Terrorhawks,
yes.
and then Dr. Aegon's little creature.
And what would you put that down to? I mean, obviously your dad was of a generation that lived through, obviously, the war, and
yeah, I guess
maybe it made some sort of residual impact upon
I
him.
don't know. It's just funny how.
Oh, there is something also about the sort of Teutonic, the clipped vocal delivery that lends itself to the maniacal.
Yeah, but that's a British approach, isn't it? Because if it was an American thing, you'd have a Brit playing the baddie.
Yes.
But of course, Dr. Aegon is very RP, but deep and bassy, and it's funny how those influences are so mixed.
Yeah.
So really, Dr. Aegon is the kind of archetypal American baddie, American show baddie, whereas his little kind of tiny shoulder-mounted space bat thing, whatever the hell it is, has got a German accent. Fascinating. Anyway, it's a very sweet show.
One of which many people are not even aware it's a Gerry Anderson production.
Well, it is peculiar because of the design style, the lovely artwork and character designs by Rodney Matthews, and because it's stop motion, and really stop motion stuff, it's only Dick Spanner and Lavender Castle, with occasional stop motion sequences elsewhere. Stop motion occasionally used in Space Precinct, Richard, by the effects unit.
Was it?
Yeah, Steve Begg would occasionally do bits and pieces there, and it was occasionally used in Terrorhawks.
Yeah, right.
But there you go.
Yeah, great. Well, we know you love the Randomiser because Gary Hodgkinson, for example, tweeted us this week, #Gerry Anderson Podcast. Cheers for the chuckle-inducing bits in your excellent Randomiser this week, Chris. Thankfully, I wasn't drinking anything at the time. Lol.
That's lucky. We don't want to get sued.
No, exactly. That's right. Yeah, that's great. So Chris will be back with us next week, of course, with another fantastic episode of the Randomiser. In the meantime, you can see all manner of Chris Dale wonderfulness on the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel, can't you?
I mean, we might as well call it the Chris Dale YouTube channel, but he has got his own one with plenty of comedy stuff. And if you want to see some of Chris's bits and pieces, then just search Colonel White's Movie Night or Colonel White Goes Crazy, and then you'll find his channel. It's Chris Dalek on YouTube. All sorts of great stuff on there. But he also produces some fantastic material for us, including the Gerry Anderson Primer, so go and check those out. And in fact, if you wouldn't mind, now we're at the end of the Gerry Anderson podcast, which we pretty much are, then perhaps right now you could go and share either this podcast with a friend, just, copy the link, send it over to somebody in an email, send it to a friend, a family member, whatever, or send a primer to them. Maybe the primer for your favourite show if it's already
Nice.
out. And send it to somebody who's not a Gerry Anderson fan at all, who's never seen that show or is only vaguely aware of it, and just see what their reaction is. We would love to hear. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk.
Very good. Now, before we go, I'm going to leave you with this thought from our Facebook group. Rowan Messingham posted, I saw a gentleman wearing a Spectrum t-shirt in Bedford Town Centre today. I couldn't think of anything clever to say to him, though. A simple SIG didn't feel like enough. What should I have said?
Oh, I don't know.
I'll leave that with you.
Yeah. Answers on a postcard.
Exactly.
Or to the email address.
Yeah, that would be easier, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Right, well, thanks for the thoughtful ending, Richard.
There you are.
And shall we go now?
Let's go now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Well, what would you have said?
What would I have said?
Because you could have gone up to him and done the dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. That's a bit weird, though.
Yeah, but he'd know, wouldn't he?
Well, I don't know. What if somebody bought it for him as a gift? Just because he likes roundels and spectrums.
Yes. Spectra.
Spectra, sorry.
In the correct parlance.
Yeah.
In the groovy parlance.
Because it's obviously from the Latin and a neuter noun.
Yes. So you could say all that to him.
Yeah.
And see how far that got you.
Yeah, that would be... Or done your very own quickfire 5. Run up to and gone, magenta or ochre?
What? I'm just going to get a cup of coffee.
Exactly. Strong Mary Avoid.
No, leave me alone.
White.
Leave
Scarlet,
me alone.
Blue.
Get
Which
off
one?
me. Get off me.
Yeah, it wouldn't have gone well, would it?
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson Podcast. Wasn't it fun?